Welcome to the City. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us for the whole episode today is one of our new City Council members. He's representing District 1, Councilman Bill Richardson. Bill, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So for those who don't know you, I'd like you to introduce yourself and just talk about whatever it is that you'd like your constituents and the citizenry to know about you.
My family and I moved here from Edmonton, Alberta over 21 years ago. My son is at ASU and my wife works at Shannon. And we came down here for a couple of years. We liked it, so we stayed for 21 years. And I became interested in what was going on in the city council. It was more convenient and transparent than in a larger city. And it seemed to be more that an individual could participate in and comment on what was going on.
You mentioned that you moved from Alberta, Canada, which is obviously a long ways from here. So how did you end up in San Angelo from Canada?
This was back in '94. Shannon was recruiting nurses up there, and there was a cutback. That was back when there was a large cutback in oil production. And that was when we came down here. We got down here on February 1st, '95. And just after that, that was when they lowered the speed limits here to 55. So this was affected the United States and Canada because of the oil shortage. And up there, the government had built a lot of small local hospitals in small communities. And they didn't have the money to keep funding them, so they were being shut down. A lot of people were being laid off. And the hospitals there in the city that were being funded by the government, they were losing people. They couldn't afford to keep people. Well, they had expanded a lot before that, so when the tax money shrunk, they had to cut back.
So you mentioned about you're sort of plugging in with what was happening with the city council. What motivated you to run for office?
Well, what motivated me to run was I thought I had some different ideas than some of the people on council and some of the people that were running, so I thought I'd give it a shot. And as you know, I've been speaking on the internet for quite a while, and I kind of had to play like the opposite advocate for some things in order to get out a second opinion.
And so you said you had some different ideas from some of the folks who were already serving on the city council. Maybe touch on just a few of those.
Well, I felt that the city council, from what I was seeing, there wasn't enough information being presented to the public. And I see that recently that there has not been enough time for the public to really know what was being presented and think about it and reply to it.
So as you were campaigning and you were out meeting constituents, I'm curious as to what you learned about them and from them as you sought their support.
I'll tell you, I knocked on about 5,000 doors. And out of that, I only remember 2 people that were unfriendly. So that's a lot of people that were friendly. A lot of them came out of their houses just to speak to me a few minutes on their doorstep. Some of them invited me into their houses. They were quite concerned about the direction that the city was going, as far as why the infrastructure wasn't kept up, and they were concerned about the new borrowing and spending, and they were concerned about the trash contract, and it seemed like the way that they were going through with the street contract seemed to be a bit rushed. And they were concerned that they didn't want to end up the same as the trash contract. But after it was settled, there was a lot of problems with it.
Well, you've only been on the city council for about a month now. I'm assuming constituents have been reaching out to you. What have they been talking to you about since your election?
Oh, well, they've been talking about the short-term rentals, and they've been talking about the trash. One gentleman contacted me, I think it was about Friday. I haven't got a chance to respond to him, but his trash cans were floating away in the alleyway.
Did you run for city council in the hopes of addressing any specific issue?
Yeah, I wanted to be on the city council when the GIS was being introduced because I have
And we should say that's geographic information
yeah,
systems.
geographic information system, because I have a background in that, and I think that's a really good system to put in place in the city. First, they have to gather the information, which they've been doing with some studies on the roads and now with the water. And that'll all go into a database, and then the GIS people can put it into a database and connect it to the maps of the city so that the employees, management can use that to identify where a pipeline is, water pipeline, or where a street is, what last time that street was repaired, and what kind of condition the street is in. They can use the information from the street study. So it'll save the city money, and the city will run much more efficiently.
As you know, the City Council has adopted 5 priorities, and chief among those is improving our water infrastructure and also increasing our water supply. How aggressively do you think the city should be in replacing our aging infrastructure?
Well, I don't think they should be too aggressive. We're having that study done now to identify the problems and where the leakage is, and I think they should wait until that study is finished. And I think then they should, carefully examine the results of that study, and then form a plan from there.
And how might you think that those sort of infrastructure improvements would be funded?
How much?
No, how?
Oh, how? Well, that right now we don't have the money to spend on it, so I think they'd have to put out a bond on it. I think they've already, for the streets that they're going to totally repair, they have proposed, or I don't know whether they put it out yet, a $40 million bond to replace the utilities on the streets that they're going to completely tear up.
The Water Advisory Board is considering 3 options for growing our water supply. Those are treated wastewater, collecting stormwater from the Red Arroyo, and completing the full development of the Hickory Aquifer. Talk a little bit about what you think about each one of those options, starting with the treated wastewater.
Well, with the treated wastewater, I think it's too expensive right now. I think we're better off to fix our infrastructure first so that we repair the leaks in the infrastructure. Also, with the wastewater from that project, they haven't developed any plan to get rid of it. They were thinking about drilling deep wells and putting it in there, but the question was asked at the Water Advisory Board how long those wells would last before they started to deteriorate, and there was no answer to that. And basically, I think that's something that it's a psychological problem also. People think about the potty water and kind of turns them off. That's part of it.
And what about the Red Arroyo? What do you think about collecting stormwater from the Red Arroyo?
Well, it has been said that it's not a constant supply, but it is a supply, and it's also an expensive option. And it was talked about that they couldn't get the silt out of the water, that we didn't have the facility to get the silt out of the water. But I thought maybe if they put the water into a sediment ponds and let the silt settle, and then pipe off the water from without stirring up the silt on the bottom.
And also completing the development of the of the Hickory Aquifer.
Well, I think they should go ahead with that. That sounds like basically the best option right now, or the first option to take. And they're finished. I think they're supposed to drill. I think they have a license to drill another 5 or 6 wells there, and go ahead with that and increase the capacity at the water treatment plant in the city. But all of that, all the water, like in the aquifers, also in the Red Arroyo, that's surface water. So it depends on if you want to have a aquifer replenished, you have to have rain.
And as you know, the city is also engaged in the West Texas Water Partnership, where we're partnering with the cities of Abilene and Midland in order to develop a long-term water source that could serve the entire region. What are your thoughts on that, that project?
Well, I think it's a good idea. The first time I ran, I suggested that there should be cooperation on projects with our sister cities, Abilene and Midland. And it's easier for the three cities to fund the projects than just for one city.
The second ranking priority for the City Council is streets. The city has invested a record $3.6 million this year in seal coating, and the council has also approved an $80 million 10-year plan to rebuild San Angelo's most compromised streets. What do you make of those actions?
Well, the seal coating hasn't worked out for the last number of years. There's been problems with it, and I've wondered whether the companies who are doing the seal coating were properly vented, or perhaps they're trying to seal coat streets that are beyond seal coating, that the asphalt has dried out too much. The seal coating is supposed to be applied every several. I've seen recommendations anywhere from 3 years to 7 years. So the seal coating will replenish the water, not the water, but the oil in the asphalt. And with the weather that we have here the last number of years, remember one year, what was it, 112 days of over 100 degrees? That's pretty hard on anything.
So what do you think should be done then in regards to seal coating?
Well, I think they have to decide which streets can be seal coated and it's actually going to work. And also, as I said, to probably vent the companies to make sure that they're capable of doing the job and that the product that they're using has a sufficient quality to do the job.
In addition to seal coating, I mentioned the $80 million over 10 years to rebuild some of the most compromised streets starting later this year with MLK and with Bell Street. Do you think that there's any more that the city could or should do in regards to improving streets in San Angelo?
Well, first of all, I think they need to make sure that this project is done properly, and as for other things that they can do, when there's repairs done to the streets, when they dig up, repair a broken pipeline or something like that, they have to make sure that the street is repaired to the same quality as it was before it was dug up. Like you can see around town, the patchwork all over the city makes the city streets very rough, and that's not really good for our image.
We're talking with City Councilman Bill Richardson, and we'll be back right after this. I've already got plenty of pets, and Lord knows I don't want another one of these. Blondie, Blondie. But adopting a park? I think I'm up for that. Adopt a Spot is a beautification program manned by volunteers who want to keep San Angelo beautiful and litter-free. Anyone can participate. Groups, organizations, clubs, families, or individuals. Participants can choose from one of our city parks, sections along the Concho River, or neighborhood circles. Or you can suggest a spot that's not on our list. Responsibilities range from quarterly litter pickup, to painting playground equipment, to weeding gardens. You tell us what you'd like to do for your adopted spot. An adopted spot sign with your name will also be placed at the site. For more information or to fill out an application, visit our website. Adopt a Spot lets you take pride in helping to keep San Angelo beautiful. As we like to say in our Pet of the Week spots, opt to adopt.
Nothing to do? What are you talking about? All the things that's going on in San Angelo at the Coliseum, the Convention Center. What about Fort Concho or a little putt-putt at the Bosque? Look, take a look at this. Type this in your phone, cosatx.us/calendar, and I'm out.
Welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with Bill Richardson. He is the new councilman representing District 1 on the City Council. Bill, we were talking about the first two priorities for the City Council, water and streets. This year, the council decided to move up to the third ranking priority, a new police station, but they've yet to determine what to do about replacing the current police station. What do you see happening on that front?
Well, as far as I know, it's supposed to go out to a bond. Bond approval by the voters, and it's really up to whether. I think they should go ahead with it if it's improved. It will mean a property tax increase, but it's time. This has been talked about for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, and from what I understand, it's pretty cramped quarters there, and not a very good place to show up for work. And if you want to have a happy employee, you have to provide them with a proper place to go to work. And I think our police officers and the citizens deserve a new police station.
As you mentioned, a bond election in November would involve citizens voting whether or not to raise their property taxes in order to fund such a project. What's your sense of what community support for a bond proposal for a new police station would be?
I think there's good support because there's good support in the city for the police department. So I think it will be approved.
Another council priority is improving processes related to the development of land and buildings. What are your thoughts on how that can be accomplished?
Well, as been said, the process needs to be streamlined so that if you're going to build a house or you're going to build an office building or whatever, that you just have to go to one place and get all the forms you have to fill out and get information on everything that you have to provide, and like all laws on how the building should be constructed, like engineering plans, all that kind of stuff. It should just be in one place and easily available and easy for anybody to understand.
And talk about why you think an efficient, effective development process is important.
Well, it makes it a lot easier for those who are developing subdivisions, or just anybody who wants to build a new house, or if we're going to have businesses coming to town, and if they want to build a new building or renovate an older building, and it makes it a lot easier and a lot, well, user-friendly.
Lastly, the remaining priority is improving pay for city employees. How do you weigh the need to provide for a competitive salary for city employees against the tax burden on citizens?
Well, as you know, the sales taxes are down right now. I would love to see all the employees up to 100% of the salaries of our benchmark cities. The plan was to bring them up to 95%, but if the sales taxes are down and we can't afford to do it, that's the reality. We wouldn't be able to afford it. And it looks like maybe there's a slim hope that the oil industry may be coming back. Oil prices have gone up now to $50, and perhaps maybe we'll get some of the jobs back, and maybe we'll get some of the revenue back, and sales tax revenue.
You're talking about taxes and budgetary stuff, and of course later this summer the City Council will be beginning that budget process. Do you have a plan as to how you're going to approach that budget process and the things that you're going to be considering in determining what the budget should be and what the tax rate should be?
Well, I have to look at what's going to be proposed first. Like, I'm not going to jump ahead on that.
Are there any particular needs that you think are not being addressed from a budgetary standpoint at this point?
Well, one thing that I would like to see is sidewalks in the residential areas around, especially around the elementary schools. I know, like, I proposed in the, in the long-term plan that they build a sidewalk between Glenmore Elementary and Glenmore Park, because I see the teachers, they walk over to the park and they have to walk down Christova Road, and when you're going around the turn there, there's a lot of growth on the corner and it's hard to see, and they're bringing they got about 3 or 4 teachers and about 20 students, and it'd be much easier if they could walk on the sidewalk. Much safer.
Of course, a lot of the opposition to that has come from developers who feel like that would increase the cost of property and of development here in San Angelo, and it might result in, say, for instance, higher home prices and less home sales. How do you respond to an argument like that?
Well, obviously it's going to be passed on to the consumer. It always is. But I think the sidewalks should be put in there, and it'd be spread out. In the development, it would be spread out to different home buyers. It wouldn't be the cost of to one individual or one developer. But it'll be passed on to the consumer, whoever's going to buy the house. That's natural business.
Do you think that should be codified in the form of an ordinance where new businesses or new developments should include sidewalks?
Yes, I believe so.
You've been very outspoken on the internet about the city council. Do you think your election to and your service on the city council will impact sort of how you've responded on the internet in the past?
I'll have more inside insight, and rather than just being proposing different ideas and criticizing others. I will have input on the council and input from the citizens, and I think that will change, because my philosophy was you have to either ask a question or make a criticism before you get a response, and if you don't do that, you're not going to get information.
So what sort of things are you looking forward to, perhaps, in learning about serving on the council and learning about how city government operates?
Well, I'm learning about. I want to learn how to get things. I have a pretty good idea of how to get things onto the agenda, and actually how to persuade other council members to support me. So I think that'll be a good learning experience for me. I haven't had to do that for a long time. When I worked for the Alberta government, I used to make presentations to department heads and things like that, and I haven't done that for a long time, but I will enjoy doing that again.
And I know that you had a prior career as a government employee, and I wanted to ask you about that. So talk a little bit about what you did when you worked in government in Canada.
Well, basically what we did was mapping and doing the graphics for reports, and ear photo interpretation, and we did field trips to, one of the jobs that I did was interpreting roads and streams on air photos. And after we interpreted, especially the roads out in the rural areas, we had to go out and check on it to make sure that our interpretation was correct, because you can see the difference between a paved road and a gravel road by the amount of light reflected. And you can, after you get to practice, you can pick out a small stream from a pretty high height on an aerial photograph.
And so how do you anticipate that your experience in working in government is going to color your service on the city council?
Well, I have an understanding of how government works. And also part of what I did when I worked for the government, I took a lot of night courses. And one of those night courses was in municipal planning and design, municipal drafting and design. And one of the things that we had to do was completely design a subdivision and do all the mathematics and plan it all out. And it's a pretty hard job.
You mentioned at the beginning of this interview that you felt like becoming engaged in city government in a smaller community such as ours is easier. But what more would you like to see the city council do in order to engage citizens and try to get them to participate in the process?
It's hard to get the people to participate. One of the things that I would have liked to see in the Charter Review Committee do was entrench the public comment period into the city charter, because that's not covered in that's not promised, it's not guaranteed in the Open Meetings Act.
Why do you think it is that people aren't more engaged with their municipal government?
Generally by politicians and generally by what's going on in the country. People feel disenfranchised and they feel that they have no say, and like everything is run by career politicians.
And so now you're part of that process. So how are you going to convince people that that their voice will and can be heard?
Well, I've knocked on their doors rather than just relying on mail-outs, and I was told that that's, I was encouraged to keep doing that because that's the way people used to do it. They used to knock on a person's door and ask for their vote. So that's your first contact right there. You have a personal contact, and they feel that they can approach you.
And of course, you're very active on Facebook. Do you anticipate having a lot of interactions with constituents and citizens via social media?
Yes.
And why do you think that that's a good and important way to engage citizens?
Well, it's an immediate way. It's interactive. It's immediately interactive. It's even more interactive than email or texting someone. And on the Facebook, you have you can have a conversation and have a conversation in a short period of time with a number of people participating. I think that's really good. It's an improvement over the old ways where we had to communicate through the newspaper, that letters to the editor, or get an interview on the local TV station or something like that. I think modern technology is fantastic.
You've only been to one city council meeting thus far as a city council member. What was it like sitting up on the dais?
I was nervous, and I was told by I mentioned that to the other council members, and they said you'll get over that fairly quickly. I'm not used to public speaking, and I've seen the citizens get up there, and some of them are really good at it, and have done it for a long time. While others are pretty, they're nervous when they get up to that mic, and trying to voice their opinion on something. And I think, the council has to be sensitive to that also.
If people want to reach out to you and contact you about whatever it is that might be concerning them or a question that they have, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Find my email and my phone number on the city website, and also they can contact me on Facebook.
We've been talking with Bill Richardson. He is the new city council member representing District 1. And we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.